Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
More than 20,000 Chinese migrants have illegally crossed the southern border in 2024, and the vast majority, according to the National Border Patrol Council president, have been single men of military age. What kind of national security issue is this, given China's hacking of U.S. infrastructure, the spying that they do, and the other aggressions?
So look, we take that very seriously, what's happening at the border. Everybody, we try to make sure that, as it relates to unlawful crossings, we certainly do everything that we can to make sure that we deal with that in a real way. Look, the DHS.
A violent storm may be coming our way. Welcome back to More War Monday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, and Truth Social. Well, as 20,000 people gathered this weekend in Phoenix, Arizona for Turning Point USA's America Fest 2024, a small group of us huddled there, led by the Committee on Present Danger China Vice Chairman Frank Gaffney, to discuss our concerns about the days leading up to President Trump's inauguration. We see the growing evidence that enemies of our republic, both foreign and domestic, seek to create conditions calculated to interfere with and, if possible, delay President-elect Trump's constitutionally ordered inauguration on January 20th, 2025. Retired Colonel John Mills is back with us today to discuss all this and more. Mills is a national security professional with service in 5 areas: Cold War, peace dividend, the war on terror, the world in chaos, and now great power showdown in a fight to save our republic. He's the former director of cybersecurity policy, strategy, and international affairs at the Department of Defense. And John is also a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. And his latest book, War Against the Deep State, is a must-read in these uncertain times. John, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and Merry Christmas to you and everybody watching.
Hey, thank you, Rob. Always an honor to be on your show. And signed copies of the book are available at my store, Lindell My Store. So you want signed copies, go there. And just, Rob, if you have a code, definitely use your code.
Yeah, it's promo code Maness, Maness, folks. If you'll go to the store there and get that book, because it's critically important, John. I mean, I can't overemphasize it enough, my friend. I mean, and thanks for coming on the day before Christmas Eve, by the way. Look, that first clip there just talked about the 20,000 Chinese military-age males that we know of in 2024. But what you don't know about that clip is that was in February of 2024. Think about that. In just 2 months, it was the February 21st. There's the date on it, I think. 20,000 military-age males from China. Holy cow. I mean, we are setting ourselves up for a tremendous loss from within our own country if these folks are out there organizing in units, hiding out in locations, training, getting resources fed to them by their compatriots and other insiders inside their network of web. Why are we allowing this to happen?
Well, it's intentional collapse of the country. January 20th, you're going to see things change. We're going to get out the worst of the worst. Starting with the worst of the worst. I mean, absolute monsters who set people on fire on subways in New York City. But this is the Chinese males. It's an intentional, and it's, President Trump brought up Panama. It's all connected. It's all related. Most of them came up through the Darien Gap, through Central America, across Mexico, across the open border. And KJP just lies about everything. This is basic numerator over denominator statistics. She goes, yeah, we're really concerned about those coming in illegally. Let's translate. If you're using the CBP, what is it, CBP One app, you're counted as legal, okay? And this is why you got crazy governors, Newsom and Hochul, who are saying they've turned around the population losses for California and New York with the arrival of legal immigrants. Well, their definition of legal is sure not my definition of legal. Just because you filled out an app does not make you legal. And it's a gross misuse of those seeking political asylum, makes a mockery of it. So yeah, we have an intentional border invasion, and they're trying to juice the numbers to make it look like California and New York aren't losing population. It's a lie. KJP is lying. It's absolutely willful and intentional. And with all the even with cyber operations, remote access cyber operations or drone operations, you still need somebody on the ground guiding you and giving corrections and giving feedback. So we got all these drone issues. Some people say it's the government lying. Some people say it's the government covering it up. Some people say it's nothing at all. I would say it actually, I'm concerned about, all of these can be true simultaneously. It's not either or. Everybody wants to go either or. It's this or it's that. No, that's not the way life works. That's not reality. It could be multiple things simultaneously. Yes, the government could be lying to us. Yes, the government could be covering something up. And yes, it could be foreign actors. And again, with the drones. And, we had this horrible episode in December of 2023 in the Virginia Beach area. Listen, you don't fly missions like this without having somebody on the ground giving you course correction and and guidance. So are the Chinese illegals part of this? Absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you go to our friend Sam Faddis's And magazine last week, he wrote a great article just asking the question. So it's the Chinese, right, or something like that, and he just laid out the arrests of the men running drone operations on the East Coast, on the West Coast. I think there was another one at another location. And when you start combining that idea with others, like I was on David Webb's show this morning on Sirius XM Patriot at 10 o'clock Eastern, and we talked about how the Chinese are inside our telecom completely. I mean, it's way beyond just TikTok, targeting via TikTok. I mean, they're in everything: our cell towers, our internet. They have chips. I mean, there are chips in the F-35. I know that are Chinese-made semiconductors. So when you start thinking about the possibilities, just non-kinetically, of what they could do if they decided to take the next step in this war that they declared with us, it is really daunting problem set for us to consider, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had Chinese nationals been arrested multiple times, most recently at Vandenberg Air Force Base. But we had a Chinese national in January of this year who was arrested for flying drones right in the Virginia Beach area a month after the unexplained 17 days of drone swarms. He flew a drone over the Huntington Ingalls shipyards, where we make all of our nuclear aircraft carriers and then half of our nuclear submarines. Plus, we've had multiple arrests, Chinese nationals attempting to get in either through the front gate or around the fence line in Alaska, in multiple times in Florida, Key West Naval Air Station, at the port just next to Port Canaveral. You have the the Cape Kennedy Air Force Station, where we launch the Air Force is the counterpart to the Vandenberg on the West Coast. Cape Kennedy is split into two parts. You got the NASA side, you got the Air Force side, and there was multiple Chinese nationals scuba diving right offshore. So it's intentional. They're testing our readiness, and again, these drones in New Jersey, New York, which I think there's a foreign national element to that. Hey, you don't do these operations without having somebody on the ground spotting, giving you guidance, giving you direction, giving you correction. That's what's going on. And now our 3 bases, I guess 4 bases in UK that have been hit with drone swarms. Those didn't come out of thin air, and that's definitely a foreign national threat. And even I think it was Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Hey, we got a problem, and again, it's a tie-in to these the illegal Chinese nationals. Definitely a tie-in, but we also got the FAA. We got 4 Iranians that have been identified. Three that were part of the assassination cell, and then you got Abuzar Ramadi, who I don't know, worked for 7 years at the FAA as a support contractor for air traffic control systems. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And he was a former IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officer. I guess took a break, came to America, joined the FAA, and then the only reason he was picked up was because he was trying to renew his IRGC membership and made a call that was triggered a collection. So, I mean, come on, this is insanity. January 20th can't come soon enough.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention the Iranian mole and the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, if I remember correctly. That's still there. Still has a security clearance, and then what was that guy in the NSC? We finally figured that one out, or forced them to. Robert Maxey or Mackey, I can't remember his name.
Rob Malley was at State Department.
Malley,
he was the interlocutor. That is actually a position, the interlocutor for Iranian negotiations. He's an Iranian agent. He's still, if you look on the State Department website, he's still posted, but he's on unpaid leave. But you also had Maher Bitar, who is, I believe, the senior person on the NSC staff for defense/intel, who worked for UNRWA. I can count on one hand the number of people who've ever worked for the U.S. government and worked for the fraudulent, corrupt, terrorist abating UN organization in the Gaza Strip that helped with the October 7th attack. This guy worked there, and he's the senior DOD/intel person on the NSC staff. I mean, this regime is riddled with Iranian and Chinese spies.
You can't make this stuff up. Well, let's take a question from the audience. Shell, go ahead. I see a hand up over there.
We have AJ, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Colonel Maness, Colonel Mills, Merry Christmas to all of you. Yesterday, there was an article that came out stating that China has placed a massive order for kamikaze drones from one of their manufacturers, and the order is almost 1 million drones. These are kamikaze one-way drones, and they're supposed to be delivered by 2026. This is a very significant order for a significant buildup. What are your thoughts on this, given the fact that we're dealing with drones already at a global scale, not just domestically? Thank you.
Well, yeah, that order is, I believe that was AJ. Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas to you. That order, very, very likely, a number of those are going to be given to Russia, and a number are probably going to be held in reserve for dealing with Taiwan. But yeah, that was a very large, significant order. Got a lot of attention. That order got a lot of attention. But some of those are definitely, just like North Koreans, you're going to find them on the battlefield in Ukraine. but also held in reserve, ready to use against Taiwan.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, we got to take a commercial break. When we come back, John, I want to stay along this line of these illegals coming in, talk about the Islamists, and we'll see a little clip addressing the severity of that issue, too. And when you marry it up with this Chinese military-age male thing and all the protests that happened over the last year and how all these groups were working together with BLM, Antifa, and other groups here in the United States, I think we may be in for a storm before January 20th. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Tonight, NBC News has learned more than 50 migrants with potential ties to an ISIS-affiliated smuggling network are at large in America. Many illegally crossed the border and were released into the U.S. by Border Patrol because there was no information suggesting terror ties at the time. Now, their whereabouts are unknown as immigration agents look to arrest them, U.S. officials tell us, saying they're among a group of over 400 migrants DHS identified in the U.S. from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Moldova, Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, and Russia as subjects of concern because they were brought to the U.S. by an ISIS-affiliated smuggling network, something the FBI director warned about earlier this year.
Some of the overseas facilitators of the smuggling network have ISIS ties that we're very concerned about.
ICE has located and arrested over 150 of the 400 migrants so far, with some already deported from the U.S., officials say, adding authorities are not panicking because their ties to ISIS are not certain, but they're prioritizing their arrest out of an abundance of caution.
The problem is the volume of people coming across the southern border, individuals from ISIS and other affiliated groups have recognized it as a weak point in our defense, and they're using this opportunity to try to sneak in.
NBC News was first to report on a similar arrest of an Uzbek man in Baltimore, whose country alerted the U.S. he was affiliated with ISIS. That man, like the others apprehended so far, was arrested on immigration charges, not terrorism-related charges. ISIS-K has claimed responsibility for deadly terror attacks in Russia and Iran in the past year. And recently, the DHS Inspector General sharply criticizing vetting at the U.S. southern border, saying DHS is at risk of admitting dangerous persons into the country or enabling asylum seekers who may pose significant threats to public safety and national security to continue to reside in the United States. Two senior law enforcement officials told NBC News they are not tracking a terror plot from this group of migrants, but their arrest on immigration charges come out of an abundance of caution. Lester?
All right, Julia, thank you.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. Unfortunately, it's More War Monday still again because, moving up to January 20th, many of us believe, especially in the national security circles that monitor these types of issues and monitor the United States government for its failings and its lies to the American people and the rest of the world. And we are really taking a close look at this. And my guest today is retired U.S. Army Colonel John Mills, a regular on the show. And John is the author of The War Against the Deep State, his most recent book. And John, I can't say it enough. That's very appropriate for us to mention the book on this particular show, because I think there is a deep state element to this. And as you said, all of these things are not mutually exclusive in and of themselves. And those clips aren't all very recent. I mean, they go back over a year. Some of the information in that clip that I just played. The situation is not in a good place from the perspective of we don't know who is in the country. We don't know where they are, in large part between these hundreds of thousands of Chinese military-age males and these jihadis, do we? And the mixture is there. The stage is set, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we just got to get to January 20th, release the J6ers. But one of the things we need to do almost immediately also is start deportations. And it's going to be beautiful and glorious. I mean, we've far past the tipping point. Public opinion is strongly behind this. They see the absolute chaos. We love immigration. We love new Americans, but they have to come here legally. And Tom Homan is on fire on this topic. And we're going to start with the worst of the worst. We're going to start with the gang members, Trey de Arugua. We're going to start with an MS-13, Chinese nationals that clearly are paramilitary. I mean, I just, went on a shopping run to Costco. Not that anybody would notice that. And right in front of us, two groups of interesting. I'm not even going to go in, but it's kind of a constellation of interesting characters when you go to Costco. Everybody seems to love Costco, but you wonder how many of those are legal, how many of those are illegal, and we got an out of control country, and we're going to start with the worst of the worst.
Yeah, and when you look at these pro-Hamas group kind of AstroTurf protests that always got violent over the last year on our campuses and towns here in the United States, and we know there's a BLM Antifa element behind that, but there was also a CARE Muslim Brotherhood, that element, and even Chinese element that it was behind those two. And when you look at the situation now, how it's been so quiet, this is something that we talked about at our huddle this weekend at AmFest when we were discussing these issues, is it's been so quiet. And do people really think that our adversaries domestically are just sitting on their haunches and waiting for January 20th? I don't think so. I think it's a strong possibility we could see another color revolution event using these BLM Antifa forces combined with these Islamic Hamas jihadis and students and the Chinese all coming together to kick off another series of nationwide protests that's going to go violent. We've all got to be on the watch for that, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. Everybody has to stay vigilant and mobilized. Everybody, hey, we won on November 5th. Everybody, that's the problem with conservatives and populists. They win, they walk away. They lose, they walk away. We've got to stay vigilant and active and involved. And again, it's going to be, in the past, anytime, any kind of border security, we just have this hue and cry break out in a coordinated fashion across the country. I tell you what, I'd say listen to Tom Homan. He's on fire on this topic. It will happen if it means arresting governors and mayors who attempt to stop this. This is going to be it's going to be incredible. I can hardly wait. I'm looking forward to it. And it's going to be a wonderful effect because, he's made it clear the worst of the worst are going to get targeted first. You're going to see a self-deportation because part of it has also been said, if you go back to your own place and own country and then you reapply to return to America, you're going to be treated a lot better and a lot differently than those who have to be deported. So I think you're going to see a tidal wave of self-deportations when this happens because people get the concept. Hey, they came here illegally. You got to come here legally. And But we're going to have to start with the worst of the worst. These violent gang members that are living off of debit cards, that were given to them by the U.S. government or NGOs working on behalf of the U.S. government. Those days are over. Those debit cards are getting cut off. Funding is getting cut off. Everything is getting cut off. This is bankrupting and destroying the nation. So I can hardly wait till January 20th. But you got to get there first.
Yeah, I think there are some self-deportations starting already, but I would expect the 2 weeks prior, as it gets closer and folks can afford, they're probably working. A lot of these folks are working here, so hard for them to walk away from their jobs. But the bad guys that are part of these groups, they're not going to self-deport because they're here for a reason. Let's take a question from the audience. Go ahead, Shell. I see that hand up over there.
We have radio face, sir.
Sirs, thank you very much. The narrative is we have an illegal immigration problem, but this is all orchestrated. It's an illegal invasion problem. And what will be done to locate and expose the people who have orchestrated this invasion, and what penalties will they face?
That's a great question, John.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of NGOs by name that made big money off of this, and I don't think they realize what's about to happen to them. They're about to have the boom lowered on their heads, because this is a racket. This is a deep state racket where whether it's Catholic charities or a number of these so-called religious groups, they make big money off of this, and they're enablers. They're huge enablers because they're given grant money, and the way grant money is given out in these situations, it always, I've done homeless ministries. I've seen in my county how nonprofits will fight with each other for helping the homeless, because it all depends on head count. It all depends on head count. So the incentive for these NGOs, more head count. And they're going to, believe me, there's going to be investigations. We're cutting off this funding. This insanity is over, and they're not going to. They used to get away with it in the past because people, it's compassion is the right thing to do. It's nothing compassionate. It's violent. It's rape filled. It's horrible. So I think you're going to see a lot of NGOs go down, including their leadership. I think that if they need to lawyer up, because I don't think they understand this is part of the storm headed their way.
Yeah, and what about the politicians that funded them? I mean, that's how we find these organizations, right? Go through the funding stream and the different authorization and appropriation bills within the United States, right? Do you think any of those folks are going to be held accountable?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's where the money comes from, and that's where a lot of this is DHS money, and specifically HHS money, Health and Human Services. They've been a lot of this money has been laundered through HHS. Just one situation I kind of been watching, because I have relatives out in Arizona, and southern Arizona is, my wife was out there, and I've been out there several times. I don't know how it was for AmpFest, but I mean, in Tucson and Phoenix, it's hard to get a hotel room because they're so filled up with all these illegals staying there on our dime and on our money. And the Tucson mayor has been is essentially out of money on this. I don't know if there's been any supplemental funds, but this is the fraud of this whole thing. That's our money is paying to stay in these hotels. A lot of these are franchisees, and their places are getting trashed. I really in Phoenix, I've been there several times, and I am really careful where after one episode in early 2023, it was ridiculous. Ivan Raiklin and I were out there, and I go, oh my gosh, we were the only non-illegals in the hotel, which was a reasonable, nice hotel, and said that's it. And we're going to see a phenomenon of franchisees go under, and they should, because they've let their places get trashed, and then they're gonna, what do they want to bail out? No way. Tough, go out of business.
Yeah, I was just out there, as we mentioned, and and all over, not all over downtown Phoenix, but within walking distance of the community center was where my hotel was, and there were illegals everywhere. And I'll tell a story when we come back from this break about what I saw on the airplane coming home, and that Monica Page tweeted out about it, something that she witnessed on her flight back home this morning, I believe it was. We'll be right back with Colonel John Mills, U.S. Army retired, here on the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube Live.
Well, yeah, so first of all, during the break, I get another alert that there's a drone about a mile from my house, just kind of going over the neighborhood. And, Governor Murphy, governor of New Jersey, put out a statement earlier this week saying he's been in contact with federal authorities and there is no known threat to the public at this time. What is that based on? For us that are just, living here and experiencing this, you have the FAA that's closing airspace over Bedminster, Trump Bedminster, one of President-elect's homes, because drones were over there. Airspace is now closed over Picatinny Armory, which is an arsenal that is supposedly supplying munition to Ukraine. So why is it that we shouldn't think that there may be some nefarious or some of our foreign adversaries who are a part of this? Not to mention these drones have also interfered with medevac helicopters and some of the private airplanes going in the area. I, as a citizen of New Jersey, I am concerned we're not getting enough information from our state legislators, and the state legislators that I have spoken to, they are very frustrated because they do not have authority. This is a federal level because it involves airspace, and they think the Biden administration and the bureaucrats are just asleep at the wheel here.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Worldview Tube, More War Monday here. And my guest is retired U.S. Army Colonel and former senior DOD defense official, John Mills. And John, we were talking before the break. Monica Page tweeted out that on her flight home from Arizona, that she was sitting next to an illegal alien child that had DHS stickers on her, a DHS like a form of ID. And as a matter of fact, yesterday morning, I sat next to two unaccompanied, what I thought were illegal kids on my flight home. They couldn't speak any English. The flight attendants were very deferential to them and took really good care of them, which is great. But there was no adult there. And I don't have any clue as to where they were traveling to. And this has got to end, man. We have too many things that we need to be focused on other than creating our own internal problems like what the country is doing right now with these illegals that are allowed to come in here and we just let them go unmonitored, untracked. Like that clip about the jihadis. I mean, we're letting jihadis in here, and they just get released, even if we do have them captured. The guy that burned up the poor woman just yesterday, he's another illegal, and that kind of stuff. So, and all of these things are coming together, which is why I titled the show what it is today. We're likely in for a storm before January 20th, a violent one. If we don't intercept that and everybody's not paying attention and takes the right action. when we get there. And the opening clip was about drones again. I want to go back to that a little bit, because when you combine that million drone order, the kamikaze drones, with the Chinese being inside our telecom systems, inside our social media systems like TikTok, where they can target people like you and me, for instance, who aren't necessarily in the government anymore, could go back in at some point, but aren't. Plus every other leader, I mean, all the way down to the IP address on this computer that I'm using to run my show in the studio, I could be targeted. And all you'd need is about 5 million of those probably, and take out the good chance of every senior leader possible in our national security system all at one time if you were able to launch a simultaneous attack. This drone issue is really concerning when you look at everything together.
Well, yeah, Rob, and you know some things about air traffic control. I mean, the reality is, and this is part of people say, oh, it's nothing. Oh, it's the government covering up government operations. Oh, the government is lying. Oh, it's a foreign national threat. The UFO thing from another planet, I don't even pay attention to that. I don't think that's relevant. But the reality is, all those other ones could be true simultaneously. I wish the government, I mean, this has been a disaster as far as public affairs and sharing information with the public here. One of the things they should just be honest about is the air traffic control system is not perfect. We do not have perfect situational awareness. There is a presumption in the national airspace system, and I was at the FAA for several years. There's a presumption that everything in the air is compliant and cooperative. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not true. And you don't know. I mean, people say, well, the FAA should shoot it down. That's not in the FAA mission or charter. Yeah, that's not what the FAA does. The FAA, two things, their legal charter, safety and efficiency. That's their legal charter. Say nothing about knocking down drones. That's not a FAA mission. And everything depends now in the domestic airspace system on something called ADS-B. It's like automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, where and I worked back on that back in the 90s in the Alaska region, and that was a demo. That was an R&D demo that was nice and interesting, but it's now the standard. We don't use radars. Everybody's, well, we just use radars. Oh, we go broke providing perfect coverage. We don't have perfect coverage. I mean, that's what people got to get through their heads. They think we have perfect airspace situational awareness. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We presume that most everybody flying is being compliant and cooperative. These drones are not being compliant, not being cooperative. And I think it's a lie when the government says, in 24 hours, we checked 5,000 tracks and determined all of them were legal flights. Yeah, I don't buy that. That's called a lie. And it's an interesting number, because if you look on the FAA website, the number of aircraft in the air at one time in the national airspace system is usually 5,000 to 6,000. The FAA, the FBI, the DHS went through 5,000 tracks in, 24 hours, and determined everything was legal. Yeah, right. I mean, show me the spreadsheet. I want to see I want to see an initial of who checked what on 5,000 flight tracks. And that's at one time. That doesn't mean over a 24-hour period. That could mean a lot more than 5,000 tracks. So we do not have perfect airspace situational awareness. Get used to it. Everything works until you have those who are not playing nicely. And that we do have that. Look, we have at least 2 Chinese nationals arrested for flying drones over restricted military airspace, Vandenberg and Huntington Ingalls shipyards in the Virginia Beach area, Newport News. So we didn't. And the reality is, an interagency team has been meeting for the duration of the Biden regime to discuss domestic counter-drone operations. We do not have roles and missions assigned. We have 4 departments. that each one of them has a little bit of legal authority in very, very specific, very, very niche cases. Right. Okay, so you see, DOD just shoot them down. Really? Where? They don't have legal authority except for, I'm not even gonna, they have a very finite set of places where they have legal authority in the domestic airspace to do that. And it's extremely small number, extremely small. So I'm sorry, people got to get it through their heads and say, well, we just shoot them down. Yeah, who wants to have 20 millimeter rounds exploding over their house? It's a bad idea. So we got to, well, you jam it. Are you kidding me? You know how complex jamming authority is in the domestic radio RF spectrum? Are you kidding me? This is not the deserts of Iraq or Syria where you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, this is, you got to get the FCC approval. You got to get court orders. You know, DOD doesn't do stuff like that. But yeah, 4 departments. It's DOJ, DOD, Department of Energy, and DHS that have niche authorities, meaning we have extremely porous gaps and seams for counter drone operations. Oh yeah, throw in the phenomena of urban air mobility. That's where you have electric air vehicles, Uber for the air, driving people around the urban airspace. Nice concept. I have no idea how we're going to do that. Drone package delivery. Yeah. We have no idea. I mean, there's NASA, and actually NASA, for those first 2, NASA's in charge of coming up with the basic process, because the FAA doesn't really have a deep research and development capability. Much of their work, R&D work, is done by NASA, and NASA's been, look, you're taking, we said 5,000 to 6,000 airframes at one time in the National Airspace System. Well, you're going to multiply that 10, 30, 50 times once you throw in all the drones for package delivery, once you throw in Uber for the air and electric, urban air mobility. Nice concept. Holy smokes, are you kidding me? And then throw in counter drone operations. I mean, the FAA is losing its mind. I mean, because this is I mean, everybody's resigning at the FAA because I said, we can keep 6,000 aircraft in the air at one time. That's it. All this other stuff, we have no idea how it's going to be done.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've always had an uncontrolled environment below 400 feet, and there's different levels of control depending on what you're flying, who you are, and what you're doing. I mean, you can be completely out of FAA control, even well above that, and under control below that if you're in a terminal control area around an airfield or something like that. But gosh, yeah, I mean, how does the local sheriff shoot one of these down? Having that authority question answered is the first step in how do we defend ourselves. And I think that's why that's those seams that are there. I mean, even the Langley commander didn't shoot any of the ones down in December of last year that were traversing the base 17 nights in a row inside his wire, where he could probably he had clear authority to do that if he could do it safely.
Just a correction. They never crossed the fence line according to the public reports. And I think that's actually legally significant because whoever was flying those knew that DOD had no authority to engage unless they crossed the fence line. Just imagine drawing an imaginary vertical line up from that fence line. So whoever was flying these drone swarms knew they could fly right up to that line, and DOD can't do anything. But the other thing is the base commander had zilcho, nothing to engage these drones with. I mean, people say, well, they'll have the security force shoot their shotguns at them. Interesting. Actually, it was, and these were big drones though. These were not little DJI ones, but there was a video from the last few days. Ukrainian forces showed how ineffective they actually did this demonstration. How ineffective shotguns were against DJI, the real small drones, first-person view drones. even a DJI drone, and I don't know what I never could figure out what size bird shot or 00 buck. I don't know what kind of load the shotgun shells were, but they showed even against a small DJI drone, shotguns were essentially ineffective. And I go, didn't know that.
Yeah, birdshot's not going to do much on them, but if you could hit it with double-aught buckshot, but the range is so short that, if it's got a kinetic capability on it, you're going to be wounded at minimum, and your equipment damaged at minimum, and likely be killed if it's close enough to you. Well, John, we got to take our last break. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion. But I want to dive into the other pieces to this Chinese element. On the drones and potential for them to be using places that they actually own inside the United States as bases for logistics, operations, training, and to deploy from if they're ever tasked to deploy into some type of military operation against us from within our own country. We'll be right back with retired Colonel John Mills here on More War Monday.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Chinese Communist Party and their affiliates currently own over 380,000 acres of farmland in the United States. And unfortunately, our government has been asleep at the wheel because much of this farmland is near crucial military facilities or other installations that are crucial to our national security. So what you're seeing is that people in Michigan are actually up in arms about this. We've had a lot of interviews on Fox News from people that don't want this to stand. You do have the Senate passing measures just last week saying that you can't, that the Chinese cannot purchase farmland near our military installations. It's a little late. It's better late than never, Trace. But This is an issue that all Americans, especially if it happens in your backyard, should be verbal on.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're facing the potential for a very violent storm going into January 20th. If these actors, both inside our government, outside our government, domestic extremists combined with Chinese military males that are here illegally in the hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands probably of jihadis that have come in illegally through the southern border under the Biden administration, and all of the capabilities we know that the Chinese Communist Party has targeting the United States in their unrestricted warfare effort ever comes together with our domestic extremist side to plan, resource, and execute military and paramilitary operations if they were ordered to do so, seems to have quite an infrastructure. My guest today is retired Colonel John Mills, addressing these concerns because we should all be concerned. And folks, if you see anything, report it to your local authorities. John, when we talk about just the Chinese owning farmland near military installations, go ahead and bring up picture 2, Mr. Producer, as we're talking about this, so John and I can see it. All of those areas you see there where Chinese own farmland are near military installations. Boy, that would be a really ironic thing for those locations to be covert bases to house, train, and operate from all these different potential adversary players, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, thank you, Rob. And, there's been, you mentioned several times the cyber attacks that have been going on since essentially early 2023. It's called Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon, and Flax Typhoon. Those are the three named intrusion sets. China's been on a cyber tear, but again, even with the cyber operation, you need locals on the ground helping you out, because even with remote access operations through cyber, there may be a certain router you need to access, might be a certain a server room you need to access by physically, because something needs to be connected, something needs to be disconnected, all kinds of reasons. But the cyber, the drone operation in December also really showed those drones likely came from land, not from sea. And you needed, there was both the General Kelly, who saw the flights from the rooftop at Langley, described a very interesting, really industrial level quadcopters, industrial or agricultural level. These are not small DJI drones you buy at Costco. These are pretty big honking drones. You're starting to talk about, and these have, maybe 2 or 3 hours of flight time, and they can actually carry, 15, 20 pounds, which is a lot. If you're talking about ordnance, that's, you can carry a bundle of thermite grenades. But he also said that they were being escorted and shepherded around by a fixed wing drone. Very interesting combination. Fixed wing helicopter working cooperatively, but they probably had different base camps somewhere. I did an arc. I did some maps on this and put this on different social media. Probably that was within, I would say, 60 miles of Langley, but they flew all the way. There's additional facilities next door to Langley. There's Yorktown Naval Weapons Station, which is very likely where the nuclear tomahawks that are being put back into service are going to be stored at. Up in New Jersey, they've been hovering around Earl Naval Weapons Station. That's that huge naval weapons station where they have a lot of, or just below the mouth of New York Harbor. Guess what? The drones, clearly, why are they hovering around Naval Weapons Station? They want to know where those nuclear tomahawks are at. But the clearly two different types of drones. They would need facilities, which would mean land, which would mean Chinese foreign nationals probably, to essentially own and operate these surreptitious or covert launch and recovery locations. And again, with the quadcopters, yes, they wouldn't. They just need a small patch of land and then probably containers to hide them in while they're being maintained. But then you got the fixed wing drone. You're going to need a little bit of a runway. My estimate was, easily, I think you'd need a 500 to 1,000 foot runway. Now that starts to look a little obvious. And when the FBI aircraft start scouring the area, they go, okay, I need to look for something that's about 1,000 feet long for a runway. Those, they might be able to take off in 300 to 500 feet, but I think 500 to 1,000 is a little more the general was talking about a 20-foot long aircraft type drone. That's starting to get kind of big, and depending when it's taken off fully loaded with fuel, you start to need some runway, even for a small drone like that. So it's going to be obvious.
I haven't seen anything that big use the rocket catapult, where you don't use the runway, you just catapult it into the air to get enough airspeed. I haven't seen anything 20 feet long use that, but it's possible they could use like a parachute recovery, so you don't have to have a runway to land on with a system like that. But yeah, it's very, very interesting, John. I'm sorry.
You need operators on the ground. People think, they're just doing it all remotely from China. No, something will always go wrong. Something will always, I need this gate open and I can't do that via cyber. Could somebody on the ground go out and open this gate? I mean, that's these things happen during these remote operations. So remote doesn't mean 1,000% remote. Often, I mean, almost always you need somebody on the ground to do something, gauge the effectiveness, give you some, something's going wrong and you can't quite figure it out. That's why you need somebody on the ground to go check it out and say, here's the problem. And
well, like we've been telling
it.
people, all these Chinese military age males, they're here to do something. And I guarantee you, we've seen them, we've caught them in biolabs, secret biolabs out in California, and the Intelligence Committee says there's likely more of those. We've seen people raising the communist flag in New York City, running police stations in New York City. So, yeah, absolutely. Their manpower is here, and they have plenty of it, don't they? Well, let's talk a little bit about, how do you supply all this stuff, and how do you stop the supply chain of the United States at the same time? And the Chinese, they really are they're inside the global supply chains. I mean, they practically own the Panama Canal, and we've talked about this before. So I have to bring up the president's speech yesterday when he said we should be owning the Panama Canal. That is great news, John. And I have to give you a chance to give your take on that issue and how that's going to affect our ability to control our own supply chain.
Well, I pulled up the treaties. There was 2 treaties signed in 1977. Essentially, one was the handover treaty. One was the enduring treaty on the operation of the canal. Now, one thing I noticed, and I told some Trump officials about this, is the Panama Canal Authority, their public-facing version of the treaty is missing some key language, I noticed, because there's key language that still gives the United States a significant role in the operations and security of the canal. And essentially, I'm paraphrasing right now. I don't have the document right in front of me. But the American version, there was additional language that was considered addendums that were incorporated into the base enduring treaty. But it's the United States still has essentially the right to intervene if there is a disruption of the operation. So if they're not charging us properly, I would say that actually falls under the terms and conditions of the treaty. But the bottom line is America walked away after the handover, and we did it to ourselves in many ways because we just packed up and left. And the Panamanians and Molino, the president, he's actually a populist. He actually is pro-U.S. But look, he hasn't gotten squat from America, So, the ambassador Ponte down there is sure happy to lecture him on transgenderism. Well, the Chinese plop down money for bridges and sanitation and railway. Well, what do you think? Listening to a lecture on transgenderism, funding for a bridge. What do you think's going to win out? And so this is ridiculous. I mean, we've done Zippo to show that we even care about Panama. So I think we could do a lot under the new Trump administration. Trump to really build. Panamanians would much rather deal with the Americans, but they haven't. Essentially, the Americans evaporated in 2001 with the final steps of the handover, and they're going. I haven't seen an American for decades. What's going on here? So, we need to read the treaty, or actually what it says, and we need to stay engaged. And we really dropped the ball on this. The Chinese are building a massive Chinese-only area of the international airport. That one's very concerning. Yep. This is almost like their Djibouti base camp. They're also building a massive. They built a massive Chinese cruise terminal. It just makes me sick. I've been there on what used to be the wonderful, beautiful, incredible Fort Amador on the Pacific side, a long causeway and a huge fort that used to help defend the Pacific approach. they're building a large Chinese-only terminal. Why are you building a Chinese-only cruise terminal? It looked, and you couldn't really get into the construction site. It was pretty well fenced. I couldn't find a hole. I couldn't find any way to get past the fence line. So it's disturbing.
Yeah, President Trump's statement, just another reason for our adversaries, both inside and outside the country, want to disrupt the inauguration, maybe even delay it. Well, John, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Go get his book, The War Against the Deep State. You can find it there at the Lindell bookstore, and use promo code Maness. And I'll see you tomorrow on our Christmas Eve show. Right here on Transition Tuesday, we've got some news from that rank and file effort. It's probably going to happen for some folks. We'll see you then on the Rob Maness Show.